starting in at something pounds, and she's 5'8". She's got curly hair and a massive booty. Booty is banging. Her name is
Azeb Freitae.
Woo! And then sitting over here on the other side is Simon Freitae. And I'm one of your co-hosts.
Hello.
And welcome to the Freitae Effect, a podcast where everyone is family and we join in communion to get some giggles, a serving of side-eye, and a healthy helping of food for thought.
Thanks, Simon. So, last week we kicked off our storytelling segment by talking about how we got started with podcasting. We shared our experiences of studio visits, consultation meetings, and how we put our brand together. If you are interested in learning more, please go back and listen to episode 29. We had a bunch of links and resources if you're trying to start your own podcast, so you can just look in the description there. Yeah. But this week, we are continuing our storytelling segment, and we are going to dive into a different direction you probably did not see coming. Ooh. And we also just wanted to have an excuse to have one of our favorite people on the show, Jeremy Gooden. So a while back, we were chilling with Jeremy, and he was like, yo, I am a passionate fan of WWE. And we were like, wow, that is super random, given that that is not what we would assume of like your personality, because we just know him from like all the creative work that we do with him. Yeah. So since we were like, dude, we really want to have you on the show, he was like, well, if you're gonna have me on the show, you might as well have me on to talk about some motherfucking wrestling. So I was like, okay, bet, son. So he was really the reason why we were so inspired to have this whole storytelling segment, because we were like, all right, how are we going to fit this with everything else? And we're very excited to share what he has to say. Before we move on, I just want to share a special announcement. So I have mentioned and hinted subtly throughout the season that I am participating in a dance project. So I'm actually officially an artist of residence in the Nozama Dance Collective, and we are participating and hosting a performance series that will be virtual called Empower One Another that will be happening on September 26th. So please mark your calendars, and if you are interested in actually viewing this virtual experience, just pay attention to my social medias, specifically my Instagram and Facebook, and I will share more information with you soon. And now it's time for
How the Turns of Table. So, if you are new to the show, if this is your third time listening to the show, if this is your 40th, I don't know how that's possible, but good for you. I'm still gonna explain it. So How the Turns of Tabled is our plot twist section. It is a story section from my life of how shit went sideways. And this story is about one time me and my old best friend, you know that friend that you have as a child that was horribly toxic?
But was your best friend, unfortunately.
Because you had no other choice?
I've had plenty of those.
Yeah, so we'll just call him Jay for anonymity.
Or you're like your shitty best friend.
Yeah, and so from like 3rd to 8th grade, I was like best friends with this person, and Jay really liked WWE. And so one day we go to this wrestling event at the Everett Rec Center, and my dad brought us there. So it's very important that you know that my dad is a part of the story, because you will see later on. But Jay and I are just chilling in the bleachers, watching all these different wrestling matches. Like there's a bunch of different, I don't know if they were volunteers or if they were like an actual wrestling company, but like it was called like WWM or something. I don't even know. It wasn't WWE though. And then there's a group of these like jerky little boys that are just taunting Jay or something. Like for some reason Jay got pissed off enough. Pissed off enough.
Hashtag pissed off enough.
If you take pissed off enough. No, so side effects. Okay. So Jay gets pissed off and goes to the front of the bleachers, points at the fucking boys, and then drags his thumb across his neck as if to say he's gonna fucking kill all of them.
Shit.
Following this, the group follows him outside, and I'm terrified because I'm like, these kids can beat the shit out of us. Like,
Facts.
Why did he do that? And mind you, he's like 4'8", like, you know, he is like not a strong human being to be doing this. Like, he's not a football player. Yeah. So I'm just like, so I'm begging my dad, hey, please come outside, stop this giant fiasco.
You were like, Jay's gonna get jump.
Yo, Jay jumpin'.
Hashtag jumpin'.
Hashtag Jay jump.
Hashtag Jay.
But I begged my dad to come stop this huge fight. And he's like, nah, you're on your own. So I'm like, okay, this is great. And little 11-year-old me or whatever is fucking running outside to go hope to God that my friend isn't about to go get the shit beat out of him.
Dad's like, it builds character.
So I go up to Jay and I'm like, kind of like trying to talk him off the ledge, but he's already just exploding from all ends. So we get to a place where there's enough space for them to fight. Like, it's like 4-on-1 because I am not a part of this fight.
Yep.
And Jay gets the shit beat out of him by all the kids and starts running inside.
Oh, damn.
So we're all running inside in the middle of this wrestling match. And one of the kids pushes Jay into a table. So the whole rec center just went like quiet and looks over at us. And I'm like, this is beautiful. So
You're like, story of my life.
Yep. So then everything comes to a fucking halt. There were teachers and like volunteers there. I don't even remember this part. I thought my dad came over and helped, but my dad now tells me that the volunteers took care of it. So he just stayed there and like waited for it to end.
Oh my God.
Yep. And then they took a hold of the situation. The people running the event, like, you know, came over to him and, you know, tried to like give him ice, make him feel better. And then they gave Jay season passes to wrestle, like all the wrestling events because he got beaten up so badly.
Plot twist.
Like, what the fuck? Like, I always saw that as like, yeah, you fucked up real bad today, but why don't you come back every single week until this is over? Like,
I know. That's interesting.
Yeah, right? So the moral of the story is basically, if you see something going down and you don't like it, don't be a passive bystander. You have the ability to take action and try to stop it. Like, I should have really just, you know, like stepped in. I should have got another fucking adult when my dad was like, nah, you good. Like, because holy fucking shit. As a child, you probably don't know this, but, you know, I'm imagining people listening to this show probably have a little bit more of a bigger brain than 11-year-old boys.
True.
So, you know, even though my friend got these free season tickets, I still think it would have been better to try to stop the fight before it began and, you know, really got out of hand.
That's mad funny, though.
Yeah.
Because they're all riled up off the, like, the violence and the energy, even though it's fake, or is it?
Is it?
We finna find out, but we gonna take a break! Hi, friends.
First, we just want to thank everyone who's made a donation to support the show through the various platforms like Patreon or by attending our events.
Running a podcast costs money because, as we say often,
This shit ain't free!
So here's what your dollars go to when you make a financial contribution to us.
Production costs. I edit every episode, and when you make a donation, it goes towards paying for reliable editing software, so we don't lose our audio files.
Streaming. It costs $18 a month to keep our episodes available for you to listen wherever you hear us.
No matter what donation amount, these are just a few of the ways we've seen how our patrons are able to make a positive impact on the show.
See what exclusive access you can get to our content by becoming a monthly donor through Patreon or PayPal. You can go to patreon.com/The Freitae Effect, and
you can find the PayPal link in any of our episode descriptions or in our Instagram bio. All right, let's get back to the show. And it is time to come back from the break and go into Jer Bear's interview. Bam, bam.
Giggity. All right, y'all, we got Jeremy Gooden here. Would you like to introduce yourself, how you want the people to know you?
Yes, what? My name is Jeremy Gooden. I am a youth worker professionally, but I'm also a vocalist and hip-hop artist. I've gone by many monikers. Currently, I go by Remy Goodman. In the past, I've gone by Good Gatsby, Jay Good. I've cycled through a bunch of different names, but I landed on Remy Goodman because that was my nickname in college.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it, love it, love it. Simon, you want to get into this?
Yes. So, Jeremy, in your own words, what is a storyteller or what is storytelling?
Storytellers. I think I'm a storyteller. I love telling my own personal stories, but I think some of the best storytellers are able to tell their own personal story while weaving kind of relatable topics. For example, I think Dave Chappelle is an incredible storyteller who can tell a story about his own personal life, but then it feels like you're in the moment with him, but then all of a sudden he wraps it into something that's relevant to almost everyone, regardless of your background, like where you come from. you can find something relatable. So I think a storyteller is a truth teller, but also an entertainer.
Interesting. So, you touch upon like comedians there. And as you know, there is a reason why we are interviewing you today in particular. So, Homeboy is a major fan of the wrestling community, correct?
That is the most correct statement that's ever been said. I love professional wrestling. I am a pro wrestling nerd. I have been so since I was 8 years old in 2000. So yes, wrestling is my passion. It is something I watch. If I think about it, Monday Night Raw is 3 hours of content. SmackDown is 2 hours of content. AEW and NXT are additional 2 hours of content. So I'm nearing 10 hours of wrestling content a week, which I don't consume anything that much.
So would you do us a favor and explain how this is a form of storytelling?
Yeah, sure thing. I think that sometimes it's hard for people to see pro wrestling as storytelling because for so long growing up, it was like almost like Santa Claus, where it's like we were lied to. This isn't real. It's fake. But I think ever since that was revealed, wrestling has had the freedom to be storytellers in like the truest form, just because it's not one genre. And I feel that way about a lot of the art forms that I love. Like what I love about hip hop nowadays is like it's a fusion of different genres, and that's what I love about pro wrestling. You can have the drama, but also mixed with the comedy, also mixed with the fantasy. You can have characters who are, half dead zombies. You can have a 60 to 70-year-old man wrestling. So it's just it's almost like fantasy, a whole fantasy world that you can kind of escape into, and it's ridiculous and it's beautiful and it's dramatic and I love every second of it, even though it's 10 hours of content.
I know, it's a lot.
So what do you enjoy most out of this form of storytelling?
That's a really good question. I think what I enjoy most about pro wrestling's type of storytelling is that a pro wrestling show, like me and my girlfriend went to WrestleMania 35 in New York, or it was in New Jersey because it was at the MetLife Stadium. And it was like a 6 to 7 hour show.
Yeah.
And it was just like a roller coaster ride. Like you had victories, you had crushing defeats, you had hilarious moments, you had Hall of Fame ceremonies where you're like laughing and crying in the same breath. So I think that I really enjoy the flexibility and how malleable wrestling and storytelling is, and how malleable the characters are. Like similar to soap operas, someone can be on a wrestling show for 25 years of their career, and you look back at their original character and see that progression. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it's absolutely bonkers, like how much a character can change. But what I love is that it doesn't stop. Like it's almost like the Truman Show, where it's like this person's whole life is a part of their story, and like everything is canon. So no matter how ridiculous, it's still canon. And that's what I love about it. It's just never-ending storytelling.
Is there anything about it that you don't like?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I think that one of the things that I don't like is that in the pro wrestling community, everyone kind of has their own cup of tea. And sometimes people who have one type of tea will shit on another type of tea. And it's like, bro, it's all tea. It's all tea. Like, just drink it. Yeah, it's almost like going to a restaurant and being like, I like these toppings, but fuck these toppings over here. And it's like, eat what you like. Eat what you like. It's all available. It's all available for you. You can pick what you like. Also, there are bathroom breaks for a reason. You can go to the bathroom if something comes on that you don't want to see. Like, so when we went to WrestleMania, the show was like seven-ish hours. So take that time, walk around the stadium, go to the bathroom, get a snack. If a segment comes on that you're not a fan of, if you don't like comedy wrestling, if you don't like cruiserweights, which are like the more flippy gymnastic type guys, you can step away, but know that the type of wrestling that you like is going to be on. So that's one thing I don't necessarily like as much about the wrestling community is this, it's the division. Like, look, we got to stick together. People are shitting on us, bro. We got to stay together. And just like any community, we're stronger together. And I think that that division is just so, it makes it not fun. because then
Yeah. Could you actually expand a little bit? I remember when we were talking about this last week or earlier. You mentioned there were two types of maybe it wasn't two. It was like heels and what?
Oh yeah, so there's bad guys and good guys.
Yeah, there's bad guys and good guys. So there's heels and there's baby faces, and then there's like tweeners, which is like you're in between. Like you're kind of like Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Technically he's a good guy, but he's kind of a tweener because he's kind of an asshole, but like still a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
So there's three types of like character that you can be. So it's the villains, it's the heroes, and it's the kind of anti-heroes that similar, just like any storytelling device, which is what I also loved about wrestling. Like I said, I got into wrestling when I was 8 years old in 2000, and I had already been into musical theater. I had been into acting and singing and dancing, all these forms of expression. And I was introduced to wrestling, like knowing it was an art form, like an entertainment art form. And I was like, oh, I'm all in, because it combined all the things that I loved. And I could, like, the same way I watched Breaking Bad, it can kind of cheer for a character or root for a character, was the same way I saw wrestling. But like, I could go see those people. Like if they came to my town, I could go to a show. So it'd almost be like seeing one of your favorite shows, like come and do a stage play with the exact same characters. And you're like, oh, dope. I get to go see Bryan Cranston play Walter White live. Like that's what wrestling kind of feels like. Like there are these larger than life characters on TV. Then it's like, wait, I can reach out and like grab them if I go to a show at the Garden.
Facts. Damn, that would be dope. Imagine.
Whoa.
That would be incredible. I think some shows should do that. Like I know that Crazy Ex-Girlfriend had her go on tour and do some of her music. Like I think more TV shows should venture into stage stuff, but that's another topic.
Yeah, because I know that like Bob's Burgers had like a live read of one of their episodes or something, and like I know other TV shows do that, but it's just so much more when you're actually like in the round and like you literally are seeing them being thrown at you or something like that. Like it's just so cool. Like
exactly. And it's like everyone in wrestling kind of speaks the same language. Like if you go to a show, before the show, someone will go, woo, and then everyone in the stadium will go, woo. It's just like, it's like a convention. And it's a really cool community when we're not divided depending on what type of wrestling we like, because it's all wrestling.
So Jeremy, I feel like I'm gonna ask every question like that. But
so Jeremy, yes.
How were you exposed to WWE?
Yeah, that's a good question. Y'all got good questions. The first time I ever watched wrestling was with my dad. He liked all sports, all entertainment. Like if it involved drama, if it involved athleticism, like he was down for it. So I was exposed to wrestling. The first event I watched was WrestleMania 2000, which is like WrestleMania 16, I think. So my dad had ordered it on pay-per-view, and we had a tape recorder at the time, our VCR, and we recorded the entire pay-per-view. And I watched that tape like a million times in my adult life. Like it was just something I had never seen before, where, like I mentioned, it was like a combination of all these different elements of entertainment that I loved. So when I fell in love with wrestling, I was like, it was in the midst of the Attitude Era, where it was like The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Chris Jericho, The Big Show, Mick Foley, or Mankind, or however you know him. But like, it was these larger than life people who were actually already a part of pop culture. Because like in the 80s, there was like Hulk Hogan, and everyone knew Hulk Hogan. He was in all these commercials. He was on TV shows. He had his own merch. And then wrestling kind of died down for a bit. But the emergence of Stone Cold, like, and D-Generation X, and everyone saying "suck it" and "give me a hell yeah," and Austin 316 said "I just kicked your ass," like all these things were like, and if you smell what The Rock is cooking, like all these things were things that you were hearing. So even if you didn't watch wrestling, you knew of these people. And you ask anybody today, like, name a wrestler, they'll probably name The Rock or Stone Cold or Triple H, or people like that I fell in love with watching wrestling with. So I watched during the big boom period. And then again, it kind of died down. I stopped watching when I was probably a sophomore or junior in high school. And every wrestling fan in their 20s or 30s can tell you the time that they stopped watching, because it's just inevitably it happens. You meet girls, you end up falling in love with something else. People might tell you it's for younger people, so you kind of get shamed out of it for a bit until you realize, oh, these things that I like that make me quirky actually make me kind of cool. So
Mm-hmm.
you fall back in love with it at some point, maybe.
You know, it's
But
funny. When you say that, it reminds me of like my own experience with like anime and Naruto. Like, it's just you're so shit on in middle school about it, and then like you're an adult and you're like, this just brings me fucking joy, so fuck everyone.
Exactly. And it makes me so mad when you'll bring up something about wrestling and they're like, oh, and they'll name like 5 or 6 wrestlers. It's like, you son of a bitch, you've watched it.
Like, you're a fan, you know it.
Like,
Yeah, exactly. They'll be,
stop
like Randy Orton, right? The RKO. It's like, bitch, you watched it. Like,
Yeah, you're like, don't act cool.
exactly. Exactly. But I think I understand when people fall off, because I think some people might not have been introduced to it as a form of entertainment, and they might have been it'd be like if you were introduced to Santa as like, oh, like this is a folk tale that we tell, and like we share presents with each other on this day. If you go in knowing the truth, you're more likely to stay in love with it forever because you didn't feel like betrayed. Like, no one told, you bastards lied to me. Like, that's not. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's funny, like how you brought up like The Rock, because like I think of people like John Cena and just like how people don't even realize they probably came from wrestling, like if they just know them from their acting careers, you know. So it just kind of shows like that direct correlation to, you know.
Exactly, and the ultimate pressure.
Yeah, facts.
Because it's live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered taking up wrestling?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I have probably injured myself multiple times doing backyard wrestling. Nowadays, in the quarantine times, in the COVID pandemic times, a lot of wrestling companies are doing like cinematic matches where there's like camera angles and like music transitions and more cinematic types of matches. And when I was younger, and I wish I could find these tapes, I used to do cinematic wrestling matches and like angles with my friends, and they were awesome. Like, we would direct them, we would edit them, we'd wrestle, hurt ourselves. Don't try it at home. They really they really mean that, because you will fuck yourself up if you don't. But yeah, we like built wrestling rings in the backyard. I was never formally trained. I went to, like, maybe I did 1 semester of classes, and I was like, yeah, I'm in my early 20s, like, and I feel like an old man waking up, like, because the mat is really hard. It's like wood with a small thing of cushion and then like a tarp over it, just tied really tautly, and it hurts to take a bump and like fall on your back. And I was like, yeah, if I was 15 and I had become callous to this like over the course of those years, then I'd be all right. But I'm 22, 23, and this shit hurts. I don't want to do it. So kudos to people who enter wrestling a little bit later in life. It can take that punishment. But the way my back is set up, I'm not down for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many other venues of or avenues to enter in wrestling as well. So there's people who are managers, there's people who are referees, there's people who are commentators, or now they're hiring writers, because a lot of the WWE stuff is now scripted. So they have like TV writers that they hire to write some of the storylines. So I've definitely thought about entering the wrestling industry, but I like youth work.
Yeah.
So speaking of the storylines, what were some of your favorites from the stories that you followed in the WWE?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think one of my favorite storylines was WrestleMania. They call it X7, but it's 17. It's all the same branding. But WrestleMania X7 with The Rock versus Stone Cold, and I just remember like that entire pay-per-view. But that main event was so incredible because Stone Cold was a good guy, The Rock was a good guy, and it was going to be awesome to see these two people clash. And in one of the final interview segments, Stone Cold said, I'll do anything to beat you, Rock. Like, I'll do anything to beat you. And you didn't know what that meant until the very end, where he enlists the help of Vince McMahon, who's the owner of the WWE, but also an on-screen villain. And he shakes his hand and like he helps Stone Cold win. And I just remember knowing it was fake, but feeling like so betrayed. And I was like, oh my God, it's so cool that like I can watch this knowing that this is a story, but you can feel that gut punch like it actually happened. Like the utter devastation of it. And just like, it really, I was young. I don't remember how old I was, maybe about like 10 or 11, but I could feel the desperation of this character. Like, I'll do anything to beat you, if that means selling my soul, and like just that type of storyline. I'm like, oh my god. And there was another one where it was Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, where Undertaker had never lost at WrestleMania. Shawn Michaels tried to beat him at WrestleMania. He lost. Then he came back and was like, I know I can beat you. I was so close. If I lose this time, I will retire. And Shawn Michaels is my favorite wrestler of all time. And it's, oh my God, it's the toward the end of the match where Shawn Michaels is getting his ass beat, and he's crawling up on the Undertaker's pants, like trying to pull himself up. And the Undertaker looks down at him, shakes his head like, "Stay down, Shawn." And Shawn cuts his throat with his hand, like the Undertaker does. Like, put me out of my misery, and then slaps him. The Undertaker tombstones him and pins him. It was just, oh my God! It was like the Mufasa Scar moment, where it's like, brother. It's just like, it's just moments like that where you're like, oh my gosh, like these people. What I appreciate about both of those moments is that it's nonverbal storytelling. It's like, you know what's happening if you're in the back row and can't hear them say anything. Like, you can just tell by their bodies. You can tell by their. A lot of people call wrestling a dance, and it really does feel like a dance, where it's like, oh my gosh, it's just incredible.
There's
so yeah, those are my two
definitely like a
stories.
choreographical aspect to it.
Oh,
I mean,
man,
even when you see people like sword fighting, like it's all, like it's kind of like you have to learn the moves, like you practice it like dance moves, and then like you go out there and it has to be like skillful and like deliberate. So it makes sense for like wrestling when you have no object. It's like your body is your instrument, and yeah.
Exactly, especially when you watch places like New Japan Pro Wrestling, where wrestlers are super respected in Japan because they just give so much of their bodies, but it just looks so fluid. It's just like, how do you even begin to be that graceful yet that forceful and that powerful? So it's similar to gymnastics. Like, I've always loved watching gymnasts as well, and just seeing how fluid something can look, but knowing how much power is behind that is I think it's dope.
Facts. So then for our last question, you talk about how you considered wrestling and then you were like, yo, this shit hurts. So there's obviously a realness to it. But then when we were talking about this another time, you were saying how, wrestling's kind of like an opera,
Yeah.
So like, is it fake or is it not?
It's a good question. Wrestling is fake. Wrestling is scripted. Wrestling is predetermined. The risks are real. Wrestlers get injured. Wrestlers hurt themselves. The same way that like a lot of people compare wrestling to the circus, because there's so many different like types of acts. Like the gymnasts and the tightrope artists, they practice those things, but they can still be dangerous. So it's predetermined. It's rehearsed. It is fake. These people do put their bodies on the line, but I think that because wrestling is scripted, you can tell stories that you wouldn't be able to tell in boxing, or you wouldn't be able to tell in mixed martial arts. And a lot of these fight promoters are actually trying to replicate some of the success that wrestling has. Like, I think we talked about this last time, where I was talking about Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather, where you see them talking all this trash to each other. You're like, oh my God, these guys hate each other. They're going to tear each other apart. And they go out there and box for a few rounds, and Mayweather wins. But then you see them like embracing and hugging and laughing, because one, they just made billions of dollars, and two, they sold tickets. And that's what wrestling is. You want to sell tickets. You want to promote fights. You want to build hype. So I think it's harder to do that. Like, reality TV shows have producers who can say like, hey, say this thing, or hey, here's another glass of wine. So they can kind of orchestrate these situations. And I think wrestling does that in a way that's safe, like in a way that people's emotions aren't toyed with, in a way that like, we know we're telling a story, we're doing this collaboratively. And I've always loved that. Just like you mentioned, like, I loved opera, I loved musicals, I loved the team aspect of it all. And it really is just like one big play that, as an audience member, you're a part of that play. So and I'm going to do a quick shout out, but like places like Company One in Boston, who do like immersive theater, where it's like, oh, I'm in the middle of this play. Like, I went to go see one that was about wrestling called The Elaborate Entrance of Chad Deedy. And the whole show was a wrestling show, but it was about the inner workings of wrestling. But you, as a fan or as an attendant, were actually a wrestling fan who was a part of the show. So I just love stuff like that. And that's what wrestling really is at its core. It's a show where everyone is in on the act.
That's dope. We love it.
Yes.
Well, that's all we got, Jer Bear.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be on your show.
Woo! Thanks for being on the show, period.
Thank you.
And we're back. So yeah, like that was great, right?
Yeah. Hell yeah, Jeremy's always amazing, and I'm just so fucking happy we got to have him on the show.
Yeah, same, for real. Like literally.
We love you, man.
Love you. But yeah, I really liked what he was saying about how like rivalries are such a big like moneymaker for this industry, because I know that like what I'm about to be talking about is not wrestling. Like essentially when I was in Miami, Kellen and Camilla and I were trying to watch the Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather fight, and I think he mentioned that, right? And so it was funny because I was like, yo, we were like trying to find somewhere to watch the fight, but we didn't buy tickets ahead of time, and that shit was sold out. And so it was like $50 a person to watch it literally anywhere. And so like there was this dude who like we met at the Sugar Factory, shout out to Richard, and he paid for all of us to watch it, and I was like, yo, man.
Whoa.
That's hashtag pretty privilege, but also like, yo.
Honestly, though, use it if you got it.
Facts. So that shit was crazy, but also just think about that. Like off of 4 people, they made $200.
Yep.
Because of a rivalry fight. You know?
That they didn't even, like, you know, it's like, it's not like any of them fucking knew Conor McGregor or anything.
No, facts.
Like
I don't even watch like MMA or UFC or any of this shit religiously. I was just like, I knew about the rivalry because of like Twitter. And I was just like, oh, well, I want to know because like, you know, I care about this. I care about who wins. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really care about the actual like art of fighting or whatever.
It's also, not like you're going to watch all the like talk shows where they're coming at each other.
Yeah, like I don't care about the interviews and all that shit. I just know that niggas are talking shit and I want to see someone get beat and I want to see someone win. I mean, honestly, isn't that kind of like what after school was like whenever there was a fight?
True.
Or even recess or just during school? Hashtag public school builds character. Yeah. But I mean, even for me, like, I never got into wrestling, but I remember, like, you were super into it.
I wasn't super into it. I knew a lot of stuff because Jay was into it.
Oh, yeah. But it was just, like, funny because, like, I remember, like, we would play, like, boxing games with Dad on, like, the GameCube.
And the Wii, because we could actually, like, you know, like, kind of punch a little bit with the nunchucks.
And I know boxing and wrestling aren't the same, but I was like, okay, well, like, this is the closest I can get to, like, why maybe I was interested in those things, even though I wasn't interested in it. But I really like how Jeremy puts this, like, theatrical lens on it, because it just makes it more, like, digestible and kind of enticing, or just, like, makes me think, oh, okay, like, this is a form of entertainment in a way that I wouldn't normally consider entertainment to be that way. Like, you know, especially because it's, like, straight up just violence. Yeah. You know?
I vibe with that. I mean, even, like, first of all, I just want to say, I love how Jeremy brought up the whole, like, that wrestling, who the fuck is it? That he said drags the thumb. Well, whoever. I love how Jeremy said actually brought up that thing that happens in wrestling where people will drag their thumb across their neck because, you know, it's fucking mentioned right in how the turns of tables. And then, you know, when you bring up like how it's fake, and, you know, as a kid growing up, you always hear it's fake, and wrestling fans get so insulted by it. Like, you know, it's like, it's not fake. Like, you know, Jeremy proudly said, yes, it is fake.
Yeah, he's like, bro, it's fake.
There is a suspension of disbelief there. And that is, you know, like you said, super relatable to theater. Like, it's just, you go in knowing it's a performance, but those emotions that you feel are still real. That thing that you take away from it is always going to be inside you and with you, but it's not always going to have to be like, this is going to change their personal life forever. It's like, no, they get to walk off camera and then go home to their kids and they're not fucking brutally beat the shit out of them. Like,
yeah. I mean, even when he was talking about how, like, you know, if you want to actually take up wrestling, you got to start doing that young. And I was thinking about, like, how I had friends who did it in high school. And I was like, oh, of course, like, it's not going to hurt their bodies as much because their bodies are still growing and forming. So, like, they can get used to this kind of, like, physical harm. Yeah. But as you get older, you just say, I want to be a wrestler. It's like, well, you better get ready because that's going to hurt your body.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. And also going on the idea of, like, the fakeness and the reality of it, you know, There was a wrestling movie that I actually saw called Fighting with My Family, and it shows how it's really, it's risky. Like, there's the stunts that you do as a wrestler, but let's say you're 3 inches off, you could break your fucking neck.
Facts.
Like, there's so much real injury that could possibly happen when things go wrong.
Facts.
Also, the movie goes, it shows like a lot of female empowerment because it shows kind of the diva section. Jeremy brings up how wrestlers are called all these different names, like heels if you're a bad guy or babyface if you're good, and the females are called like the divas. And so it's about this one female wrestler, Paige, and her story of like how she got into it, like the people that she had rivalries with, and like all that jazz. It's just like, honestly, if you want to take a look into some wrestling shit and still be like a feminist, then like there's some pretty good action plot, and it's based off a true motherfucking story.
Yeah. And then lastly, I totally forgot that like sumo wrestling is totally a form of like wrestling. Because when Jeremy was like talking about something about how there was like Japanese wrestling or something, I was like, oh yeah, sumo wrestlers. They're not just comedic. They're actually wrestling and part of a culture. Wow.
Yeah. Sumo wrestling's so interesting though because you're so praised to be overweight. Like
True.
It's not like the normal culture, or at least the American culture. I don't know the Japanese culture how it looks at weight, but like if you're not that hefty and you want to be a sumo wrestler, no one's gonna fucking take you seriously.
True.
So
yeah, because it's like the whole point is to be sumo. Yeah.
I had one last point as well. So I'm just talking about like soap operas and wrestling. When Jeremy was bringing that up, it was crazy because like I had a roommate sophomore year who watched wrestling and watched General Hospital like religiously, and it's just he said similar things about how like there's an ongoing story that character development can happen for decades where like a lot of these shows we watch nowadays, they have like 5-6 seasons. Like character development only goes so fucking far, but these people are literally growing up, having kids. Like maybe their kids go into wrestling. Like it's fucking insane. And you can jump in at any age and basically have a gist of what the fuck is going on,
right? Or
just have an appreciation for what's happening in front of you.
Yeah.
Yee.
And like Jeremy said, don't try this shit at home.
Don't do it.
Don't. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Just don't.
You is human. You are not jackass. So we are gonna hop into dad jokes, notes, and quotes. 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 By Scott Freitae.
Okay, here we go. Are you ready for jokes?
I don't know. Like maybe.
Hold on, I'll abbreviate if I have to. Can I do the Sandpaper Sally joke?
Oh, absolutely.
I really didn't want to, but
it's disgusting. But if you want to do it,
I'm gonna go there. Okay, so a guy goes to a whorehouse, and he says, "What can I get for $5?" You see, $5 is always like.
Literally, it's like
Everybody
bottom line.
Like,
Bottom line. So he said, there's this lady, Sandpaper Sally. So he goes up and he starts having sex with her, and he's like, oh man, this hurts so bad. And she goes, I can fix it. So he goes, well, I don't know how you're going to fix that. So she goes in the bathroom and comes back, and he goes back on her, and he's like, wow, this is the best sex I ever had. What did you do? She said, I picked my scabs. I know it's so bad every time, isn't it?
It's just so gross.
Can I do the got any grapes one?
yeah.
Okay. So a duck goes to a store and he says, you got any grapes? And they go, no. So he leaves. And he comes back the next day. Says, you got any grapes? They said no. So he leaves. Comes back the next day. He goes, you got any grapes? He said, if you come in here and ask for grapes again, we're going to nail your feet to the floor. He says, okay. He leaves. Then he comes back the next day. He says, you got any nails? I said, nope. He says, got any grapes? It still gets you. Okay. All right. We're going to go way back. This is going back to like when Papa talked about 4 white horses in the mud.
Okay.
What's the sharpest thing on earth?
What?
A fart, because it can cut through your pants without leaving a hole.
Wow.
That's actually smart. Like,
Wow.
That goes way back.
I like
Wow.
that one.
That is like from my childhood.
deep toot.
Can I do the "Hey lady, you know"
Yeah.
joke? Yeah. There's a big fat lady walking by a pet store, and there's a parrot out on the perch, and it goes, "Hey, you're the fattest lady I've ever seen in my life." So she goes in the store and she says, "Your parrot just insulted me, and I'm very offended, and I'm gonna sue." And the owner says, "Look, I'm sorry. I'll talk to him. It'll never happen again." So she goes, "I hope not." So then she's walking by the next day, and the parrot sees her and goes, "Hey, lady, you know."
It's time to take the keys.
Take away.
Take my keys.
Ching, ching.
Key number 1.
Bang.
So my number 1 key, basically, I'm now very interested in watching wrestling because I kind of want to watch it through this lens of it's a production.
Yeah.
And just kind of give it a chance because I never really gave it a chance because I was like, this shit isn't for me. Like, I was like, I'm a girl and like, this is just a bunch of violence. But now I'm like, okay, I'm grown and gender is a social construct.
Facts.
But also because I'm like in the arts, I kind of want to watch it from that perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna start to get into it. So thanks for inspiring me, Jer Bear.
Thank you.
And then I guess going off of that, like, you know, I won't judge people as hard when they say they watch wrestling.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, you literally have no life. But it's also like I also have no life because I just be watching shit too. But I do have a life because I'm a busy gal.
Busy.
Yes. Okay, Simon, what are your keys to take?
So I got one key. It's a central theme that's been going throughout this whole episode of just because something's fake doesn't mean that you can't appreciate what goes into it. So, you know, whether it be fucking going to a play and seeing someone break down on stage, or going to a wrestling match, or seeing a kid open a present on Christmas from Santa. Like, you know, it's like it can all be based off some kind of lie or some kind of fallacy, but the emotions that they bring are always going to be real. Like that, the part of the reality that sticks with you is just what brings it to... What?
Just like you were hitting your chest.
Yeah, like, well, it sticks with you. Like, you know, it hits you right in the heart. But, like, yeah. Like, so, yeah, even if something hits you and it's kind of fake, just take what's real out of it and really enjoy it for what you have. Because, you know, there's so much dark shit in the world right now, and we don't need to be dwelling on that. We can always be non-judgmental biddies that love life for what we have.
Amen.
Here.
Hallelujah.
And we're going to say bye-bye. So...
Bye.
Be
Just
sure.
kidding.
No. We're going to shine it. Be sure to like the episode.
Share with friends.
And follow on social media.
Subscribe and comment on SoundCloud.
Follow on Spotify.
Apple Podcasts or wherever you stream us.
Email us or comment
On social media or leave a review.
with any feedback
Affirmations or topics.
you want to hear on the show at
TheFreightAsAffect@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening.
Have a great rest of your week.